Hi everybody, Dr. D here. Today we're going to talk about a topic that has multiple faces and huge impact on virtually every aspect of the biological system, and that is the topic of stress. Now, we're going to do a series of videos on the topic of stress, isolating the various aspects and the various impact that it has on different systems in the body, but fundamentally, stress is anything that changes. So there are two glands called the adrenal glands, which I'm sure you're all familiar with by this time. They're two little jellyfish-like glands that sit on top of the kidneys, and their primary job is to monitor the environment, the biological environment internally, and the external environment, the world that you live in every day, for perceived threats to the population of all 50 trillion cells that live in the neighborhood of your biological environment. So when something changes, good, bad, or indifferent, the adrenal glands do not differentiate stress. They simply notify, put everybody on alert that something's changed. So they don't care if you get hit by a car or you win the lottery, they do exactly the same thing. And initially they start to secrete a series of hormones. And in the short term, this is a good thing because it's the equivalent of you getting cut off in traffic, feeling that immediate rush, and then the threat passes, the adrenal stress hormones then stop being secreted and everything goes back to normal. That's called stage 1 of the general adaptation syndrome, which involves primarily the adrenal glands. Now there are 3 stages in the general adaptation syndrome. Stage 1 is what I just described. Stage 2 is when you're exposed to long-term stressors, such as environmental stresses, stress in a relationship, stress at work, financial stresses, things that go on for a long time, but they become something that you get used to, but nonetheless, they're still there, they still annoy you, they still disrupt your comfort, your day-to-day peace of mind. And in doing that, they cause the adrenals to continue to secrete these stress hormones in multiple quantities over a longer period of time, which means number 1, they're going to be there longer, and number 2, they're going to take longer to get rid of, and as a result of that, whatever action these toxic substances have on the various systems in the body is going to ultimately develop into some kind of compromise. For instance, one of the primary stress hormones is called glucocorticoid. Now, the glucocorticoid has a number of side effects when it's present in the system for an extended period of time. One of them is to divert blood away from digestion. Now, obviously, this is a primary compromise because it could be misdiagnosed easily as a digestive problem because the symptoms that it creates are in the digestive system, but it's not a digestive disorder. It's a problem with the way that your body is managing stress and the degree to which it's producing these stress hormones. Now, the second side effect of the presence of the glucocorticoid over an extended period of time is that it sends a message to all 50 trillion cells in the body, and the message is very simple. I've determined that there's a perceived threat that you need to be aware of, and until I figure out what it is and what to do about it, you need to go into protective mode. And in protective mode, the cells only store enough food and oxygen for 3 seconds. So now every 3 seconds, they're opening up to a potentially toxic environment, grabbing a few crumbs, doing the best that they can to maintain the integrity of the system that they function in. But then you can see how this becomes a house of cards in the fact that now we've got a less of an access to the nutrients required for normal function. We've got less nutrients available for energy production. We've got fewer nutrients available in general for the body to function as a whole. And the third compromise that the presence of the glucocorticoids creates is a small scar on the inner wall of the smallest vessels, the furthest away from the heart. So the first thing that happens is the walls of the blood vessels are narrowed. And this causes the heart to have to work harder to pump the blood back through those small vessels to the heart, setting you up potentially for the diagnosis of hypertension, which once again is a symptom of prolonged exposure to stress and increased production of the glucocorticoids. Now, long term, if this is not diagnosed and it's not treated and it's not dealt with at the level of cause, the glucocorticoids continue to have an effect in other parts of the body. For instance, they will deplete a gas in the brain called nitric oxide, which we'll discuss also in a future video. Nitric oxide regulates the production of the feel-good hormones like endorphins and dopamine, which is why when you're under stress or exposed to stress for an extended period of time, you feel so crummy because the feel-good hormones are being depleted. And having depleted the feel-good hormones, now your body is set up for anxiety and depression, and if left unchecked at this junction, develop what's called an amyloid plaque, which interferes with memory and recall, focus, and attention, setting you up for dementia and Alzheimer's. So you can see how this house of cards from one simple stress hormone has a huge impact on the entire biological environment, and if it's not isolated, identified, and worked with at the level of cause, then you're going to be chasing symptoms for a long time. You're going to be chasing things that, in effect, are shadows of the real imbalance, of the core imbalance, which is stress and the way in which your body responds to that stress. And then finally, there's the third stage of the general adaptation syndrome, wherein the adrenal glands just say, I've had it. I give up. I'm just being bombarded by inordinate amounts of stress over a long period of time. I'm going to have to sacrifice some of the things that I'm responsible for, and I'm going to have to ask some of you to jump in and help me manage these symptoms over the long term. So, for instance, the next hormone that's secreted is a message to the pituitary gland that sends a message to the thyroid saying, I just got a message from the adrenals saying that they're really ready to give up and they need some help, and they wondered if you would jump in and help them. And the thyroid gland, being the nice gland that it is, says, well, sure, of course, I'll be happy to jump in for a period of time, but I have a job to do too. And if I have to continue to support the efforts and the activities of the adrenals, I'm going to have to sacrifice the role that I play in digestion, another compromise, and the role that I play in metabolism, and the role that I play in other areas of the body that are part of my job. And the adrenals, having many other jobs to perform and many other functions to participate in, now have to sacrifice their ability to perform these functions at an optimal level. For instance, the adrenals play a role in managing blood pressure, managing blood sugar, managing the movement of minerals in the body, managing the balance of water in the body, so it can set you up for potentially being dehydrated, essentially. And finally, the adrenals play a huge role in the production of male and female hormones, as well as in regulating insulin production. So you can see how the simple exposure to stress over a long period of time can create symptoms in the cardiovascular system, can create symptoms in the brain, can create dysfunctions throughout every system in the body as a result of a simple exposure and an inability to manage stress effectively on a long-term basis, which is the topic of an upcoming video. I'm Dr. Richard DiCenso. Thank you for watching.